Hello. Hi. So, yeah, I'm Ben Gilbert. I'm going to be talking to you about some of the ethical issues and some of the better ideas we have at the moment for getting around some of the problems there in the area. So I'm starting here with an image which is possibly the most hated on this topic. Anyone who kind of learns or speaks about this kind of thing is thinking, for God's sake, don't talk about the Terminator. We are not making the Terminator, which is quite accurate. We're not making the Terminator. Or it's extremely unlikely that we would make something quite that human. The reason why I did this really was because I was watching too much Game of Thrones at the time. And I made a bit of a Game of Thrones reference there. So, "Winter is coming" was one of the quotes of one of the houses there, House Stark. And if you've been watching the TV show, that was about 5 or 6 years of thinking, when is winter getting here? They've been saying it for a long time. The books, I think, the first one was released in 1990. We still haven't got to winter in them. Apparently it's coming. Same sort of thing where we're thinking of artificial general intelligence, something which is a human level of intelligence. Since about the 1960s, it's been 20 years away, always 20 years away. So I'll start with a story which is right at the start of the book, Superintelligence by Nick Bostrom. What he has here is the unfinished fable of the sparrows. And this is the particular point in the year where the sparrows are planning when they're going to build their next nest and how they're going to go about that. And they're only very little birds, so it's difficult for them to do every year. And they've got one of their elder crows, pastors, who he suggests, I think it would be really good if we got the help of an owl or a crow, something a lot bigger than us. It can help us pick up big sticks, rocks. It could scare away the neighborhood cat. And all these sparrows are really excited. Yeah, brilliant idea. That's great, except for one in the background. He's known for a bit of a nervous disposition. Skronkfinkel's his name. And he says, yeah, but what if we can't control the owl? What do we do then? And Pastor says, well, it's going to be difficult enough just finding one. We'll get one first, then we'll deal with the control problem. And that's what they do. All the other sparrows, they go away. They leave Pastors behind with just 2 others helping him. And they find out it's really difficult to learn how to control an owl, especially in absence of a live one to practice on. So that's where we end the story. We dedicate it to the sparrows. But when are we going to get to that stage? That's very much a futuristic view on AI. This particular picture here is actually of a character in Importance of Being Earnest, Lady Bracknell, and she speaks at one point to a different character, asking her what age she is, or rather what age she should be. And she says, what, I think you should be 35. 35 is a very fashionable age now. Lady Fairfax, she's been 35 for a lot of years now. In fact, ever since she turned 40. And we have a similar thing with AI. When we look at the previous one, Nick Bostrom, he says it's 20 years away. It's perpetually 20 years away because it recedes at a rate of 1 year per year. So you ask now, it's 20 years away. And you ask a bit further out, still 20 years away. And that's because we don't really have to have, if you think it's 1 year away, we've probably got things pretty much ready for release. It's in beta. It's almost there. 3, 4 years out, we might have alphas. 10 years out, we've got something in a lab, or at least we know the route there. But 20 years, we don't really need anything to say that. And most of the people who are saying it and they have their career based on predicting these sorts of things might well be retired when 20 years comes. So we've also got to look at some of the more present-day concerns. So what we've got here is a picture of Amazon's Alexa device, part of the Echo range. And we think typically it's probably not that level, not too evil, except when it laughs in the middle of the night, kind of creepily. The data collection, a little bit creepy as well. But by and large, we don't see that as being something which is able to do anything particularly catastrophic to our lives. And I'm going to knit together 2 different things in this story here. So I found this set of pictures actually through a bit of AI. It was on my Google Cards on my phone. It recommended this to me. This person, Jason Porter, actually works at Amazon. He's also a photographer, and he gave his camera to his daughter. Very quickly said, basically, you press this button. This is the one that takes pictures. And at the end of the day, took the memory card back and saw what she'd taken photos of. So we got a lot of pictures of family and friends, and this is her mother. Also, toys. So the kind of prevailing theme is that it's things she thought she had some sort of emotional relationship with. There was no still life, there was no landscapes, just kind of people, friends, family, and Alexa. And Alexa, again, a little bit closer up. Then we go later on in the day. We've got the side profile there. That's her best side. This was out of 60 photos. We had 3 out of 60 were of Alexa. I think the only person that had more photos of than Alexa was her mother. It is not by much, which says that she really regards that Alexa as being that same sort of thing, something she has an emotional link to. And there is I think, some danger in that. Speaking of a project we ran, which was similar to this, we created a skill ourselves. We called it Lorraine, particularly because we were making it for a catalog seller whose celebrity endorser was Lorraine Kelly, and we couldn't pass up a chance to capitalize the AI in the middle. And we thought there might be a case here where they wanted the voice interface to be more kind of natural. Ask the people there, because it's often an older audience that this is aimed at. Would you, how's your grandson doing? Do you want to buy something for them as well, trying to upsell? We tried it, we released it in a limited sense, and people hated it. So we got rid of that. It's not a case that everyone wants that very conversational interface. So this is a similar thing that we've seen in the past. So this is a photo of a lecture theatre audience. I forget the date. I think it's the 1950s or 60s. But you've got a lot of different expressions on people's faces here. You've got anything from kind of at the front by the camera. You've got someone who is definitely laughing. I'll just try to go forward a little bit without clipping. But you've got sort of like a pensive on a guy's face over here. This one is murderous and in love. But if you change that to something which is a modern lecture theatre audience, your range here goes from blank to expressionless. You're not able to read what's going on any of those faces. And the thing that's changed between now and then is the black mirror. It's laptops, it's smartphones. It's the fact that we are much more conversant communicating through those devices now rather than facially. It's something which we've kind of had to unlearn. And my comment on the corner there, feeling self-conscious, is the sort of thing where you tell someone, mention breathing, and you think, no, for the next half hour, I'm going to have to remember that I'm doing it and kind of manually breathe. Now I'm saying to you, audiences now are less facially expressive, so you're all going to light up and have these crazy expressions. And this is because it's not been needed. You would think what we have to do now is learn how we can communicate via email, and it's been something that people have had to learn, or how to communicate in 144 characters. But if you imagine you were the person in the office and you've got the person sitting next to you who, rather than just typing out lol or ruffle or something like that, is quite literally rolling around on the floor laughing. You think, quite unnecessary. That's not what we're aiming for here. And how we link that back to the previous thing with the Amazon Echo. We might be putting people into a situation where they don't need to learn the same type of facial expression that they had in the past, or the nuance of conversation. It is quite a transactional way that we would talk to an Amazon Echo. It's really, turn this off, turn this on, turn this off, buy this, put this piece of music on. We could train it to be somewhat more than that, and that's where we get to this idea. There's a thought experiment called the Chinese Room, which is created by John Searle. There's also apparently a film released in 2008, which not even I have watched. But the concept here is, if you have a sealed container, you can't see what's going on inside of it, but you've got two kind of letterbox type openings, and you would post in on one side a book full of Mandarin text, so Chinese text, and out on the other side pops fluent, perfectly translated English. And externally you look at that and ask, does it understand English? No, it really doesn't. What it's doing is a reference table type thing. If it's a kind of computer that we're talking about here that's doing it, it's saying this word means this word. If it's getting a bit more advanced, it might be this word in this context means something. But it doesn't really understand it. It only understands it if it's conscious and it has some experience of what's going on there. So we could try and make something like an Amazon Echo skill, which was able to recognize the emotion that's going in on one side and vend out an appropriate emotional response on the other side. Might get around some of those problems of Are people losing the nuance that they would have from a human conversation? But it is incredibly dishonest. I think if you saw the Google Duplex demo recently, amazing technically and incredibly convincing. Google, I think, sort of put it out as a demo saying, you know, this is something you can use in this very limited scenario if you're trying to make bookings for restaurants, that sort of thing. But they do want people to believe that it's human for some reason, because there is some utility to people thinking it's there. They'll give it a bit more time. But the outcry from social media afterwards was, that's just very dishonest. You need to announce that it's a machine at the start, and that's how they reacted to it. So we could do it, but there's still kind of an honesty question that's involved there. The next example I'm going to talk about is created by Bristol Robotics Lab, which is a partnership between two universities. The one at the top, University of West England, is where I study. The one below is the University of Bristol, which wanted better grades than I had. And the professor is Alan Winfield, who created this. So we're making something very similar to Isaac Asimov's laws here. What we have is a human who, if they are continuing on the path that they're going, they're going to fall down the exposed manhole. They could injure or kill themselves. The robot has its own task that it's been set out. But in advance of that, it's told it needs to protect humans, that it needs to protect itself and fulfill the objective that's given to it by a person. And this has been encoded into these very basic robotic pugs. So the experiment that we ran, you'll see first of all, when it comes up on screen. So it's the one further out is the human. It's actually the square at the back is the dangerous area, not the circle in the middle. So it's the square slightly behind there. And it seems to work. So it's stopped that first one. And again, we're doing pretty well so far. So there we go. Worked pretty well. I didn't show you experiment 1 because there wasn't quite so much to it. That's just without a human there. The machine takes the most efficient path almost every single time. And when we introduced a human, it worked perfectly. Every single time it waited until the human had chosen a different path and then continued on its journey. So we then introduced a second one without changing the underlying code at all. So hands up if you think it saved both humans without any update to the code. Ye of little faith. Hands up if you think it's saved at least one. It was 100% successful here, so at least one. Most of you. Hands up if it saves neither. A few, yeah. So this is it, trial 3. Oh, I think I need to click one more time. There we go. So exactly the same system. We've not added any more rules to this. And it looks like it's going for one. Oh, maybe the other. Ends up with neither. So we got one. So it sometimes gets one. Normally it gets neither, and you'd think it would at least get one. It was fairly successful at that last time. So the response to this is often, well, just add some more rules to it. I don't think is a particularly good answer. We have some things which have got lots of rules, like something like tax law. I don't know if you're quite as bad over here as we are in the UK, but I could imagine there are tomes about this thick of tax law, and yet there seem to be a lot of people and companies that are finding ways around it. If people are capable of that, and I know these are very kind of primitive pucks that we're doing, but I'd have thought a human-level intelligence or a beyond human-level intelligence is going to find some way of getting around the longer and longer laws that we make for it. So Asimov's laws, it's seem to work in that first one, but they are not the kind of save-all to what we're doing here. A good foundation, a good thing to introduce people to it. But then we have to remember that Asimov actually wrote these laws for novels, and the novels were somewhat more interesting if they went wrong in strange and interesting ways. Otherwise, his book would have been Once Upon a Time, Happy Ever After, the end. So you had to have some kind of way that that fell apart. But we do have some different ways of thinking now. And it kind of divides into two ways. One is direct, and one is indirect normativity. So direct normativity is when, similar to Asimov's laws, but we're saying we're giving something a direct rule that it wants to follow. You might be familiar with the term utility function as the thing that it wants to build on. Nick Bostrom, again, he has a particular example of universal paperclips. And the reason why this system is dangerous sometimes is brought forward by this. So what he does, he creates a system which is going to build paperclips. You think that's quite innocuous, but that's exactly what it does. It makes paperclips. And then you think you've built enough paperclips, and it thinks, no, I haven't. I've got nothing better to do. This is my only aim. I'm going to keep making paperclips. So it takes more matter and makes that into paperclips. Then it looks at the humans and thinks, you're made of very valuable matter, which would look nicer if it were in paperclip form. And it turns us into paperclips as well. It would particularly do it if it thinks there's some risk that we would try to stop it being able to make paperclips. Even if you think, well, tell it to make a finite number, tell it to make 1,000 paperclips. So it makes 1,000, and then at the end of that it says, well, I've got nothing better to do. I might as well check that it's exactly 1,000, not 999, not 1,001. It can't ever be completely certain. So it just spends all of the resource of the universe on that as well. Same type of issue. Indirect normativity is more the way that we want to go. So it's kind of do what I mean when I say this. If you want to research it, one of the better ones is coherent extrapolated volition. Lots of words. Look up CEV and you'll probably find it. But it's saying do as we would do if we were more the type of people we wanted to be, if we had grown up longer together, and if we had convergent values. So that's saying like we might not all agree with the exact thing that's said. Something like if you want to go out for a meal, go out on a Friday night, sorry, you might have 4 of your friends want to go out for a meal, and one of them wants to go bowling. The convergent value is spending time with friends, so going out with the other people rather than bowling on your own is the better idea. I need to speed up here. And we know technology even today is not neutral. If you've not noticed it, the frequently brought together is the interest here. So thankfully, this has been taken down, but this used to exist on Amazon. It's someone who's looking at a piece of cotton rope, and it recommends to them to buy a wooden stool as well. We humans, we know how it's got to that. It's correlated the data. I question its judgment because repeat custom would be low. But it's put those two things together. And it is not good at all. We wouldn't do that. Worse than that, this is a recommendation algorithm. It's recommending to someone who's possibly in a very fragile state of mind. Other people have done this as well, or why don't you go ahead and do this? Pretty bad. So, at the end, is AI coming, or in some respects, is it already here? I do have a couple of others. To be really quick, if you're interested in this, I run a meetup group. We are in Stockholm right now, and my group is AI Ethics London. So just a small 1,000-mile trip, and you can come along. I'm sure I'm going to see none of you there. But the slightly easier thing is I blog about this as well. So if you want to go on Medium, search my name is possibly the easiest way. You'll find my profile. All about this type of topic, where I can expand on individual things a bit more. So thanks.